And so we'll do introductions and announcements, but Bess, you should just for your awareness, you should have the share screen option below when we are ready to go with your presentation. And yeah, I'm just reading Danelle's message. Oh, wow. Cool. All right, so why don't we get started? Why don't we get started with introductions with the folks that are here now, so Bess can start getting a sense of who's in the room. And if you, let's just say if you have an announcement while you're doing your introduction, feel free to throw that in there too. So I'll go first. I am Gina Fiorelli-Duranlo. I am the CLEAN Program Coordinator for CLEAN, the Climate Literacy and Energy Awareness Network. We are a program based out of Ceres, Cooperative Institute for Research in Environmental Sciences, one of the largest NOAA cooperative institutes. And we are based at CU Boulder, but I actually work remotely from the East Coast, so I'm on East Coast time. And I'll pass it over to my colleague, Patrick.
Hey, everybody. I am an education specialist with CLEAN, working on a couple projects. One of them is focused on teaching climate change across the curriculum in non-science classrooms and doing research with teachers in Washington and New Jersey to see what they're up to and what is needed in that realm. And the second one is creating an educator's guide for the National Climate Assessment with a couple student interns and a really cool team. And I wanted to mention that there is an NSTA Science Update webinar this Thursday focused on that work. So if you are available and interested, please jump in. And with that, I'll pass it to Marie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Marie Fargo. I'm the Instructional Resources Coordinator at Climate Generation. So I do a lot of our curriculum development and managing our resource library, as well as some professional development with educators. And I work at, I think I forgot to say, at Climate Generation, so a nonprofit in Minnesota. And I will pass to Danelle.
Hello, everyone. I'm based in Tucson, Arizona, and I work for a small nonprofit, the Water Center for Systems Thinking. We're focused on systems thinking, not water. We're named after our founders, Jim and Faith Waters. That's wildly confusing in the desert where I live. And so we help teachers and business and industry folks bring the habits and tools of systems thinking into their work, which includes climate and energy related education stuff. And I'll pass it off to Scott.
Hello, thank you. I'm Scott Lewis. I'm in Pembroke Pines, Florida, and I'm director of the Florida Climate Educators Network, which we created to help support teachers in our state who are interested in working on climate change. So topic today is very timely. I'm actually going to pitch tonight. We actually have a presentation for FCAN at 7 p.m. on the new NAAEE working standards on climate justice and climate action, and I'll put in a link on that. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what Beth says, and maybe we can come up with some questions to ask our speaker, Martha Monroe, who's presenting. She was one time she was NAAEE president. So it'd be interesting if you got some questions that we could throw at her about what you're doing. So thank you. And I'll pass. I don't know, besides Bess, is there anyone left? I can only see 6 people now on my screen.
No, I don't think so. I don't know. Colleen was here for a minute. I don't know if she'll come back or not. But I'll just say if she does, Colleen Fisk is works at the Renewable Energy Alaska Project. So she's very focused on some regional work in Alaska, but does a lot of great work with energy education. So if you see her pop back in, that's that from her. But I don't know who else might be joining later on, but I did want to mention too, also while Marie is here, I am going to be helping promote and lead a cohort for the Climate Generation Summer Institute. That will be taking place about mid-July, and just trying to get teachers knowledgeable about that. And I can find a link and put it in the chat as well, but it's a really great PD opportunity for educators that Climate Generation does every year. It's like one of the best. So Clean is leading the North American cohort, and that's again mid-July. Oh yeah, and thanks Marie for putting the link in the chat there. And Katie, we were just doing introductions and announcements. Everyone else shared, so I don't know if you want to jump in.
Sure. Hey everyone, I'm Katie Wolfson, she, her. I'm at NCAR with the UCAR Center for Science Education. So we do all sorts of Earth System science education, field trips, tours up here at the NSF NCAR Mesa Lab, as well as curriculum design and learning resources. And a lot of that deals with climate and climate science and climate change. Announcements, I feel like we've announced it in previous Clean ones, but we do still have some spots in our teacher professional development workshops that are in person this summer at the Mesa Lab, and I will drop a link in the chat to that webpage for those. Yeah, I think that's all of our announcements for right now.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Katie. Great. And yeah, we're recording, so folks that want to listen in after can access this on our website after the fact. And then so yeah, I'll let Bess unmute and maybe share her introduction and get started if she's ready.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Debating which screen to share. Okay. So can you all see the slideshow?
Yep.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the invite. My name's Bess Caplan, and I work at the Howard County Conservancy, which is located in central Maryland in Howard County. And we are a private nonprofit that has about 230 acres where we do all kinds of programming. And I'll talk a little more about that in a minute. But myself, I come from an informal science education background. My degrees are actually all in environmental science, and I was in that field for a little while doing stream assessments and wetland delineations and restoration work and that sort of thing. But my heart was always in education. And I worked for 13 years for the Baltimore Ecosystem Study, which was a National Science Foundation sponsored program where we had a team of ecologists studying urban ecology, and my job was to take the science and translate it for the public. So I mostly did that through working with local school systems, trying to get local ecology into the curriculum, taking students on field experiences, and just kind of getting them to study and understand their local ecosystems. And then I came over to the Howard County Conservancy about 3 years ago when they received a grant from NOAA to develop a unit on climate change for 6th grade science. And that is what I'm going to talk to you guys about today. And just advance my slides. So here we are. This is where I work. It's a lovely photo. And the Howard County Conservancy it has a kind of a neat backstory. The land that we are on was part of the same family for several hundred years, really dating back into the early 1700s. And when the final 2 surviving sisters, they didn't have children of their own, they decided that when they passed away, they were going to put the land under easement and create a nonprofit to manage the space. So that is exactly what happened. In 1992, the final sister passed away and she left the land. in the hands of a new organization that was formed to manage it. And not only do we have the beautiful acreage and streams and forests and meadows, but we also have an amazing array of historical farm structures, including the original farmhouse on the property. So today we host a wide range of education programs, everything from elementary field trips to middle school and high school field trips. We have a lot of adult programming. Bird watchers come from near and far to our property. We run a summer camp, and we actually have a second location now in the eastern part of Howard County where we run a nature preschool. So if you're ever in Central Maryland, if you ever come down to Baltimore or DC, definitely come give us a visit. It's a beautiful place. Before I get into talking specifically about the program that I was hired to manage, I want to just give a little context as to what's going on with environmental education in Central Maryland. So that map on the left, that is Central Maryland, and you may or may not recognize it if you're not from this area. But that's kind of the middle part of the state and the counties that are included in that location. And all but 2 of our counties in Central Maryland have their own environmental ed centers. What I mean by a center is a location where students go for their environmental education. And Maryland has adopted the Next Generation Science Standards. And we also have our own set of state environmental literacy standards that requires EE every year from K through 12. So certain counties, and in Maryland, all of our school districts are by the county. So certain counties have built their own centers, and kids go there to get all their environmental education, or they have staff that might go into schools to provide environmental ed. Well, in Howard County, we don't have our own center. So many years ago, our school system decided to partner with the Howard County Conservancy to help provide the environmental education for students. So as with everything else, our budgets have been cut over the years, and today we are left with just one full-time school system educator that implements all of the environmental education for every student in the county. So you can see on the right-hand side, we've got about 57,000 students in Howard County. This is public schools. And we have one full-time school system environmental educator. So what's been really great about the partnership with the Conservancy, since we're a private nonprofit and we do our own fundraising, we have staff on hand, myself included, that can help supplement that one staff person. And so I just wanted to kind of give you guys that context so you can see like how Howard County is situated in this EE landscape. So, okay, so here's the project. So NOAA provided a 3-year grant for us to develop a unit on climate change for all 6th grade students in the Howard County Public School System. And we call it the Student Research and Action to Reduce the Climate Change Emergency. As part of that program, we brought in quite a few partners to help us develop the unit and the field trip that goes with it. And so I'm going to talk about both those pieces in a minute. But here are the partners that we've been working with over the past 3 years. So we are the Howard County Conservancy. When we wrote the grant, we included the Howard County Public School System as part of that. They were a key partner from the very beginning. Otherwise, there's no way they would let us take part of their science curriculum and put our unit in there. So they were a partner from the start. And then we have all these other local partners that we brought in, and Climate Gen's on there too, not so local for us, but we brought in all these partners to really help us accomplish our goals. So everything from the local branch of the NAACP to Live Green Howard is part of our county government that deals with sustainability issues. University of Maryland and SEEGE, the Community Engagement, Environmental Justice and Health, that program is out of University of Maryland. And that's led by Jacoby Wilson. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that name. But all of these partners came together to help make sure that we were meeting our goals for this particular unit. So a little bit of background on the county that I'm in. So this is demographic data from a year or two ago. It hasn't changed much. You can see that 53, almost 54% of the county is white, 21% is Black or African American, and about 20% Asian, about around 8% Hispanic or Latino. So kind of remember those numbers. I'm going to show you this next slide. So this is the county demographics. Our school system demographics are a little bit different. So 32% of our school system kids are white. So even though the majority of our county is white, only 32% of students that are attending our public schools are white. And the number of students that are Asian and Black and African American are larger than our county population. So we're seeing a big shift, and same with the Hispanic and Latino. We had about 8% in the county, but 13% make up our school system. So we're starting to see this shift towards a more diverse school system. The younger population in our county is more diverse than the county as a whole, if that makes sense. And that's really important for what we're going to talk about with climate justice in a moment. And just, I also included on here some other demographics. 23% of our student population qualifies for free and reduced meal pricing. Okay, so let's talk about this project. So Climate Knowledge is what we call it for short. And what we did, and so the Conservancy and the school system got together, they applied for this money from NOAA. And they decided to take an existing unit on weather. So sixth graders all learn about weather, and modify that unit to create the climate change unit. So when I was first hired, my job was to start writing this curriculum. So I looked at this unit on weather, very detailed. Kids are learning all kinds of things that they probably don't need to know in sixth grade about weather. So we whittled that down and replaced a lot of the content in that unit with content on climate change and climate justice. And we kept pieces of the weather unit that would help students understand climate change. So they do still meet the standards, all the sixth grade science standards in NGSS for understanding weather. We have just boosted that unit with a lot of content on climate change. We also worked with teachers to help write the unit. So I am not a school teacher. I do not have my teaching credentials, even though I've been in this education field for 20 years. So I really relied on input from sixth grade science teachers as we were writing this unit. They were very, very helpful. We'd get together in the summers and we'd write these lessons. And it was a fabulous partnership. And I mentioned before that there's one school system educator in charge of EE. That person is actually based here out of the Conservancy. So having her, a school system educator at the Conservancy, working with me on this project, again, really helped to boost that project and to make it a true partnership between the Conservancy and the school system. And as far as we know, this is the first program of its kind in the region. And here in Maryland, when we talk about like the region, we mean the Chesapeake Bay region. So the Chesapeake Bay is our big environmental feature here in Maryland and along the East Coast. And there are 7 states that fall within the Chesapeake Bay watershed. And as far as we know, we're the only district in all of those states that is teaching climate change to every sixth grade student as part of the mandatory curriculum. So this is what the unit looks like today. I'm not going to read all of this, and I'll share my slides with you guys afterward. But lesson 10 really hones in on climate justice. So you can see kind of leading up to lesson 10, the kids are learning about weather, precipitation events, temperature, storms, climate, global weather patterns, the composition of Earth's atmosphere, severe weather. And then we kind of get into, okay, well, who's more at risk? And that's the nuts and bolts of the climate justice piece for the unit. Now, most of that content comes in lesson 10, but we do have little sprinkles of climate justice content in these other lessons leading up to lesson 10. So by the time the kids get to lesson 10, they are familiar with some of these terms and concepts, and they can dive much deeper into climate justice. So I'm just going to chat briefly. Wanted to show you guys some examples. I pulled not everything we have in our unit, but just some examples of where climate justice falls within this unit. And one of the first things the students look at is climate justice around the world. So we borrowed some of this content from other organizations that have done work on climate justice before. And this is a lesson where kids are looking at different locations around the world and how climate change is impacting them. And this lesson is really used to introduce kids to certain vocabulary terms like vulnerability. And so not only are they kind of starting to get familiar with this terminology, but they're actually then looking at these real world examples of how communities are being impacted. We also talk a lot about urban heat islands. So here in Maryland, heat and flooding are two of the main things that we are at risk for with climate change, heat being the big one. So there's these really awesome maps that were put together of DC and Baltimore, and we are situated right between those two metropolises. So kids are very familiar with DC, they're very familiar with Baltimore. And these are the this resource I found where this is a slider. So the kids can take that slider and move it left to right, and they can see temperature overlaid on land use. And it's just this really neat tool that the kids can use. We have this embedded into a lesson where they're learning about urban heat islands and why urban areas are hotter than their surrounding rural counterparts. And this online tool really displays that very, very well for them. Urban heat islands they come back to urban heat islands quite a bit throughout this unit. So Turner Station is probably a community you all haven't heard of, and I'll admit, living here, I had never heard of Turner Station until more recently. It's a community not terribly far from Howard County. And I mentioned that flooding was also one of the main risk factors for us here in Central Maryland. Well, in 2016 and 2018, in Howard County, our main street, we have a historic main street called Ellicott City, flooded in 2016 and again in 2018. And these were such devastating floods that people died. Buildings were destroyed. This is an area of town that there's restaurants, there's shops, there's a museum. Kids go here with their families all the time. Most students know about this area of town or have been there. And our county is spending a tremendous amount of money installing infrastructure to prevent future flooding. And they're even currently right now removing some of these historical buildings to create a flood resilient park on Main Street. So the kids are seeing that our county is taking action, spending all of this money. Well, those same floods in 2016 and 2018 also wrecked Turner Station. Turner Station is not getting the funding to build their resiliency, not at all in the same way that we are here in Howard County. So we use this case study for students to compare why one municipality is getting funding to create a climate resilient community and another is not. And if you haven't guessed by now, the demographics of these two communities are quite different, both racially and wealth. And so the kids really have to confront that. They have to ask themselves, well, why is my community getting the help it needs, but Turner Station is not? And there's a great article written by Scott Dance from the Baltimore Sun that gets into the climate justice issues facing Turner Station. It just fits so perfectly with our unit. The kids spend some time on this. So we also have the kids play a game. A little hard to describe the game without actually playing it, but I'm going to do my best. So we divide the kids up into households. So there could be 4 or 5 kids in a household. They sit at a table together and they receive some information about their household, plus a little bit of starting money and some starting resources. And what's pictured here are just some examples of the resources that they have access to and how much it costs to buy the resources. So the students are confronted with 2 different scenarios, one at a time, of an extreme weather event. So the first event is a heat wave. Heat wave comes through. The households have to decide what resources they're going to purchase to keep their household safe. Well, not every household has the same starting resources or the same amount of money. And so we kind of go through this game, and at the end of the round, certain households survive and certain households don't. And then we play it again with a flood scenario, similar thing. The kids have to buy, and they can sell resources that they don't want. They can buy new resources, but of course they don't all have the money to get what they need. And what ends up happening over the course of this, 45-minute game is certain groups start to ask questions like, well, can I ask this group over here if they can for a donation? Or what if my household and this other household, what if we join as one household and pool all of our resources? Can we do that? And so the kids come up with these really creative questions. And I try to always say yes. Whatever they ask me, can I do this? I try to say yes, because I want it to reflect reality as much as possible. And so what the kids learn in this game is that the more they share resources amongst each other, the more households are safe from these extreme weather events. And at the end, they kind of share out, they read their household description, and the kids realize, oh my gosh, like this group had $500 and I only had $50. And so they realize that not all the households started on the same level playing field. So it's actually a very cool game. Very proud of it. And it really helps to get the point across about equity, fairness, access to resources, and kind of those kinds of things. This is something that, again, I'm not sure who's heard of the Dallas ISD mood meter. This is something a school system in Dallas developed to help kids identify how they are feeling at certain times. Let's say a child is struggling, they go to the counselor's office and they can't put into words how they're feeling. Well, here is now this chart that the student can look at and help identify how they're really feeling. And you can see it's color-coded and that the words in each color are somewhat related to each other. So we decided, hey, this is kind of cool. The kids are going to be talking about these difficult topics. Talking about justice issues is not always easy. Kids might feel angry. They might feel frustrated. They might feel hopeful in some ways, or they might feel like, let's say, I don't know, let's see, they might feel disappointed. So we wanted students to be able to express how they were feeling about these topics. So we made this available to teachers, and we put it in different points in the unit if teachers want to use it to help kids, discuss how they're feeling. And I did make a pared down one because this is a lot. If you have a room full of 6th graders trying to identify how they're feeling, but this one is a little easier for them. So the mood meter, it's a pretty cool tool. I've seen it used in classrooms. The first time you use it, kids are just kind of like, but by the end of the unit, with teachers using it again and again, the kids really take to it, and it really does help them kind of pinpoint where they are emotionally with these topics. And the last thing I wanted to show you are, so in the unit, we have these interactive online tools. So Tree Equity Score. This is one of the coolest things. Tell me, I think I might have to stop sharing. Can you see the Tree Equity Score on my screen? You can? Okay. So this tool, this is my new favorite tool. Tree Equity Score identifies kind of like the access people have to the benefits that trees provide. So some researchers put this together, and I'm just zooming into where I am here in Howard County. Researchers put this together to help people and municipalities identify where the needs are greatest for increasing tree canopy. But it's not just a tree canopy tool. So for example, here is this community, this neighborhood has a tree equity score of 86. So not only does this take into account tree canopy, but it also takes into account all this other data. So people of color, unemployment, people in poverty, heat disparity, health burden index, linguistic isolation, and children and seniors. And it generates this priority index. So if you're a county government and you have funding to for climate mitigation or climate to build your climate resiliency plan, you can use this tool to help identify where those needs are the greatest. So it's not just about, are there trees present? It's what other factors might contribute to people really benefiting from those trees. And I'm going to zoom out. This tool covers a huge swath of the country. I hope you guys are familiar with this tool. If not, definitely check it out. Most urban areas are now covered by it. So in rural counties, you're not going to get this data, but most urban areas are covered by it. And I just think it's so cool. So I put this in the unit. I was like, this is super cool. It's pretty easy for kids to understand what this tool is and what it's saying. And it's in there. The kids are looking up their neighborhoods, and we do have some rural parts of Howard County. So if they're not covered by Tree Equity Score, they can look at areas they are familiar with, but super cool tool. Park Equity Mapper is another one we have here in Maryland, where our parks are mapped. And you can look at any community in the county to see what kind of access they have to park space. The Maryland Environmental Justice Screen Mapper, this one also is just another interactive tool that looks at communities and what the environmental justice issues are in those communities. It's not great. This one is my least favorite of the three, probably. But it did come out of that SIEGE, that organization out of University of Maryland that looks at climate justice. So we have kids looking at these tools and looking at where they live and do they agree with the score? Do they not agree with the score? So they're really kind of analyzing these tools as well as just getting this understanding that not every neighborhood's the same. So that's the unit. The kids also come to me on a field trip. And we have developed a 2-hour field trip here at the Conservancy. Part of that field trip is on climate justice. So what we do at the Climate Justice Station is the students look at two communities they look quite different from each other, but they're actually both in Baltimore City, just a few miles apart from each other. And we have discussions and which community is going to be more at risk for climate change. And then the second part of this activity, they actually come down onto these maps we've created and they design their own community using these laminated tree canopies and other features of the community to try to create a tree or a community that has a tree equity score of 100. That's the highest you can get. So this is about a 30-minute activity that the kids do on our field trip. And we're asking the kids to design a community that maximizes equity. Simple. So I just want to show you a couple other things that are in this unit. One of the things we put in there, we wanted the kids we didn't want it to be all doom and gloom. So we put an activity in there where we have the kids go out into their own neighborhoods and look for evidence that their community is doing something about climate change. So we have this image, and they kind of circle what they're noticing in their own community. And it's really meant to be like an uplifting activity. So we're not looking at what's missing from their community, but what is their community already doing? Are they recycling? Are they composting? Have they switched out? A lot of the street lights, if not all of them now in the county, have switched out for LED lighting, solar panels, all kinds of stuff. And then finally, the way the unit ends is the kids do an action project. So the teachers work with the students to identify an issue that they're concerned about, that they think they can address either at school or in their communities. And this is the first year we did it. We got a lot of posters, which is fine. We're now working with the teachers to try to spice up these action projects a little bit more. We want to see more kind of permanent things going on at the schools, not just making posters about recycling and composting. But year one, that's a lot of what we got. Here's another example. So we don't necessarily expect the kids and their teachers to implement these action projects. I'm more interested in the plan for the action project. I want to see them pulling together all of these things that they have learned. I want to see them identifying the resources that they would need to do these action projects. Whether or not it happens, I'm not so concerned about it. But I want to see that the plan is there, that it's in place. And finally, one of the things that spun off of this whole project was what I termed the Sunday Solutionist program. So each year, the past few years, on Sundays in the fall, I've invited 6th grade kids from across the county to participate in this supplemental program on climate change. So the kids have to apply. We can only accept about 40 kids into the program. And on Sundays, they come to the Conservancy, and we have programming for them all about climate change. So the kids that have applied and come the past few years are really interested in climate change. They've met other kids from across the school system. We have 20 middle schools in our school system that are also concerned about climate change. And we've been able to connect them to resources to help them achieve their own climate resiliency goals. So that's a pretty fun program for kids who are into it. And this is my last slide. This is a quote by one of our teachers, one of our 6th grade teachers. So again, we've got 20 schools. We've got about 40 teachers that we work with to implement this unit and the field trip. And this is a quote from Katie White, who's one of our teachers. I'll leave it here for a minute if you guys want to read her thoughts about climate justice. And I think she really hit the nail on the head here. The kids are angry about these injustices, but there's hope. And these kids leave the unit feeling inspired, and that's what we want. And that's kind of all we can hope for. We're educators, and we go out there, we do our best, but ultimately, eventually these kids, they all move on, they matriculate through the system, and then they graduate, and we never see them again. And so while we have them here, we want to leave them with the best possible hope for the future. And we hope we're doing that with this program. So that's my talk. Any questions for me?
I have a quick question.
Yeah, sure.
And thanks so much. Sounds so great. And definitely love all of the hope and action that you're doing with the middle school students. So a couple quick things. We work with teachers, obviously, mostly in Arizona, but across the country and internationally a little bit. And I'm just curious about, in particular, the game, but the kind of the curriculum as a whole. Are you sharing it, or are you protecting it? What is your
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So the field trip activity will be up on our website pretty soon. Unfortunately, the unit is owned by the school system. So I have been trying to get them to give me approval to put at least the game online because I do think it is one of the best parts of the unit and should be made publicly available. I am happy to send you that. If anyone emails me at this email, I will send it to you. But I am still waiting on that permission from the school system to share it.
Yeah, I guess I wouldn't want to get it unless it was like under some kind of a Creative Commons license where we could modify it and make it place-based for Arizona and other places. I'd love to see it. But like also it's almost like torture if I can't really use it. You know what I mean?
I mean, I do,
Yeah.
absolutely. I would say, you know, use it. Like credit, yeah. I don't work for the school system. So I want people to use this stuff. Like we got this grant, it's federally funded grant. All of this stuff should be public.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I'm going after with the school system. But again,
Yeah.
I'm happy to send it to you if I won't tell.
Yeah. And then just one more quick thing. I'm curious if your students are participating in the, like when they, especially the group that is coming from across the county, are they participating in the Youth Awards program from the Need Project? Or
No,
oh gosh, they should be. I'm assuming you know about it or you don't know about it.
I know about it. Yeah, it's those kids, we have them for such a short period of time. And I think, yeah, that's just not something we've brought to anyone's attention or, yeah,
Well, you should maybe consider
we
it because
should.
easily go to the youth conference, which is usually in DC.
Yeah, no, that
Yeah.
would be great. It's a good
Yeah.
idea. Thank you. I guess Scott.
Yeah, thank you, Bess. Thank you for that presentation. I have a couple of different kinds of questions for you. One, one of the last slides you showed was that nice quote from the teacher and about the importance of bringing climate justice into this. And I was curious, I actually had mentioned this. I have a sister-in-law who's visiting right now from South Carolina, and I'm in Florida, and she said, well, climate justice, do they even use those words anymore in schools? I said, well, not in Florida, really. They probably get into trouble for that. But do you face any of that, or you get any feedback from other teachers or parents about negatively about using the word climate justice, or that's okay in Maryland these days?
It's okay in Maryland. When we first announced the project about 3 years ago, we had like a press conference and the county executive was there and, got some press. It was in the paper. I think we got one call from someone who was concerned. We have had no issues. I mean, Maryland is a very liberal state because we are on the Chesapeake Bay. Environmentalism here is like even the Republican side of the political spectrum are on board with a lot of the environmental initiatives because of the Chesapeake Bay. So we kind of have that to lean on. We have had no issues. Climate justice, yes, it can be, I guess, a heated term, but we have had no issues whatsoever. Yeah.
Right, right. You mentioned, you've got a focus with the weather on flooding and a real impact that climate change is making in the community. So these are the kids, you mentioned that you kind of got diverse kids. These are mostly urban and suburban, not rural. I know the facility itself looks like it's in a real rural area, but I'm not sure that's necessarily the case with any of the kids that you're seeing. Is that true?
Yeah, actually, we have a really big mix. Howard County is kind of it's got everything. So the eastern part of the county is much more developed. It's on Interstate 95, major highway that cuts through it, very close to Baltimore. I would say very developed, very urbanized, but the western part of the county is rural. And a lot of the kids, we have a couple schools where most of the kids are on well water. They're not on city water.
Right.
So actually I had a field trip at 140 kids here this morning, and most of those kids are on well water. And their households are not included on the tree equity score mapper. So we see a mix for sure.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I wondered if you know, since you're focused on weather, it struck me just looking at the first photo that you showed of the site there, and you mentioned farming. If farming comes up in any of your conversations about climate justice, or, you know, we have an issue here in Florida. Our governor actually took away possibility of breaks for farm workers, water breaks. We can't do that. But of course, you know, and you could kind of call that a justice issue of people actually having access to those kinds of things. So, you know, farming gets impacted by climate, both flooding and heat, obviously.
Right.
And that, I don't know if that would something that could come up in your conversations at the site itself.
So we actually don't address climate change in farming, which now that you're mentioning it is, you know, something we should potentially consider down the line. But that is not part of the curriculum. Most of the kids in the county don't come from families that are farming. Even the ones that live in the rural area, they're just in their McMansions, right? On 4 or 5 acres. Their parents are not in the farming industry.
Right.
So no, we don't address farming. We do talk about farming as part of the food, the industrial food system. So how you go from growing your food item to getting it on your plate. We talk to the kids about all the different steps to go, you know, from growing your orange to drinking your orange juice, or raising your cattle to having your cheeseburger. And that's really where farming comes in, but no, it does not address climate change impacts on farming.
Yeah, it might be, I mean, as you say, if you don't have too many kids that are actually involved in the business, it may or may not be of interest to focus on that. Certainly if you got a lot of farm worker kids around, that might be, I don't know, but it might be interesting as a justice issue or something. But anyway.
Yeah, and I think like for any of these activities, like I said, I'm happy to share like any of this, and I think the most important thing is making it place-based and adapting it to where you are. So even the maps I showed, these, where are they? Oh, I think I went too far. These maps, these aerial images, you know, these are communities in Baltimore City. So you know, don't use those, right? Use ones that are nearby where your students live. And the issues with Turner Station and our local Ellicott City flooding, you know, maybe your issue, Scott, is with farmers. But there are many examples of climate justice issues happening across the country. Could
Right,
find it
right.
in any community for sure.
And sometimes it's an opportunity. I mean, if the kids don't know where their food comes from, you know, it's an opportunity for education there as well. And these climate impacts are gonna have an impact on what we have available for food. So there's some other opportunities there.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
I have another quick question if somebody else doesn't know.
Sure.
I'm just curious, and maybe you mentioned it, how much of this is happening at your facility with students that are visiting, and how much, and then what support are teachers getting for like professional development to help them teach it and know the science?
So the entire unit is taught in the classroom at school. All of these 12 lessons, they are taught by 6th grade science teachers at the 20 middle schools. The only thing that happens on site where I am is a field trip. And it's about a 2-hour field trip, plus they stay for lunch. And we do that mapping activity where they're kind of city planners and they have to create, you know, a town that has a tree equity score of 100. And there's some other activities, you know, also in the field trip, but everything else is taught by teachers. So we offer a summer intensive, which is multiple days. Then we offer after school, like typically 4 after school sessions during the fall. And this unit is taught in the spring. It's actually being taught right now. Teachers are kind of wrapping up the last few lessons right now. I also am available as needed to go in and provide support. So in a couple days on Thursday, I'm going to go into a school and help run the game for one of the teachers. So we do try to provide like ample training. That being said, we always have teachers that don't come. They either can't come or they don't come, they don't want to come, whatever it is, but they all have access to the unit. It's in the same format as, you know, other units that they have to learn and teach. Any other questions?
And Danelle, I know you put a note in the chat when the conversation with Scott was happening about Climate Fresque, which is more of a international organization, including their adult and student versions, including them. There's adult and student versions. Patrick, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was curious. I think I heard this right. You said that at the end of the unit, they are looking at possible climate actions, but you don't necessarily ask them to follow through with those. I was
Right.
wondering why not?
Because they don't have time. They don't have time. This is a 45-day unit. We are super, super lucky that the school system gave us 45 days to spend on climate change. It's like amazing. And it's almost May and there's 6 weeks of school left and they still have a whole unit on, I think it's on like astronomy. So they run out of time and there's also money, right? So kids want to install a rain garden at their school, or they want to build a compost pile, or I don't want these limitations to prevent them from dreaming the dream. And so, you know, I the first year we did say we want you to implement it, and I got all posters, and I'm like, this is, like this is not. I know these kids are more creative than this. So what I did, I developed a kind of a guide, very guided worksheet that they have to fill out that will help them come up with their action plan. And that includes like, what resources do you need? How much do you think it will cost? But I didn't want those to be limiting factors for them. I really wanted to see what they could come up with. And so that's why I didn't want to limit them. And I know time was a big factor and money is certainly a big factor. And if the kids are super motivated and they want to bring in their principal and their PTAs and get something going, we are here to support that. But yeah, that was kind of a decision I made, just given what I know the limitations are for getting projects in the ground.
I hear and appreciate that, but I wonder if it's possible to present multiple levels of action that are possible and address some of those equity and time concerns so that it feels like students have some agency and ability to engage. Even though they necessarily jump in on a big thing, there are at least some steps they could do to get that place in action.
Yeah. And I think like, so they haven't submitted their action projects for this year yet, but last year we did see a little more of creative projects. So this was a scale up project. So last year we only worked with 12 schools. First year we only worked with 3. This year it's all 20. So we'll see what happens this year. We did have one of our training sessions specifically on action projects. So to really help the teachers think through how to get these things done. So we'll see if that translates to more action this school year. I don't know yet, though. They still got a couple of weeks. But I
Cool.
hear you, Patrick. Yeah, I'd love to see more action projects actually going in the ground.
And that's all couched in a 45-day unit in schools is awesome. That's really cool. You were able to pull that off. If you ever want to talk about scales of action and play around in that and have a longer conversation, definitely up for it. And I'd be super curious to see how it goes this year in that realm. But
Yeah,
it's really exciting you're able to get this much into schools. That is very cool.
Yeah, and that goes back to that partnership with the school system and even writing the grant. So they were like full-on partners with us from the get-go.
Has there been any other interest from other counties to model what you've done?
There's been a lot of interest. I haven't seen it come to fruition yet, but I've been trying to get the word out as much as possible, giving presentations, talking to people, other districts in the state. So we'll see what happens. But as far as I know, no other districts have implemented something like this at the moment.
Any other thoughts or questions from folks? It's a great discussion.
Well, thanks, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you, Bess. It's great to hear about what's a success, I will call a success story happening regionally, and a bright spot. And it's definitely very evident to see how much you care about this work. And thank you all also for being here and sharing in the discussion. It's a great call today. So thank you all.
Thanks, Bess.
Thanks. And Gina, I'll send you my slides.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Bye, everyone.
See you all later. Bye.